Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the category of Best Visual Effects. Now, this is a really tricky category to do this year. Some years there is a clear frontrunner, but this year it's looking like it's going to be a tight race between two films. And now that we're getting closer and closer to the Oscars, I think this is the 16th video of 24, so we're getting closer and closer, and we're starting to tackle some of the harder categories. Without any further delay, let's take a look. Fifth most likely to win is Kong, Skull Island. Now this movie came out back in March of this year. It came out in between Logan and Beauty and the Beast, so it sort of got lost in the shuffle between those two box office juggernauts. I saw it on demand recently. It's a pretty good action film. It's good for what it is. It's fun. It's enjoyable. The effects are nothing terribly impressive. Considering that the last big King Kong movie we had was 12 years ago, the effects have not gotten that much better. They look impressed. They look fine. And I know that a lot of hard work went into it, but when you compare it to the other nominees in this category, I just find it really hard to believe that Kong is going to walk away with it, especially considering that this is the only nomination that the film got, and the film is really not that well received anyway. Fourth most likely to win is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Now this film A, made more money than Kong Skull Island, and B, is more well liked than Kong Skull Island. So for those two reasons alone, I think it has a better chance of winning, but I don't think it has any real chance of winning the Oscar. I think it's going to get a few more votes. But this is a sequel, and they didn't give the Oscar to the first film, so I find it very, very unlikely that it's going to win the Oscar. I think people will remember it has some very impressive visual effects, some complicated visual effects, and people will remember it, but I think it's not as high profile as the top three films in this category, which make it an unlikely contender. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 will get votes, but it seems like a very unlikely winner. Only one... I mean, here's the thing. We've never actually had a film in the Marvel Cinematic Universe win an Academy Award. And, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 won visual effects back in 2004, but that was not officially a part of the MCU at that point. So, yeah. I don't think that Guardians of the Galaxy is going to win. I mean, for something in the MCU to win, it'd have to be big. I think maybe Black Panther, we'll see what happens. But I don't think Guardians of the Galaxy is going to stand a serious chance to win this Oscar. Yeah. Spent way too much time talking about that. Third most likely to win is Star Wars The Last Jedi. Now this will get more votes than the last two, but I find it hard to believe that it'll win, simply because The Force Awakens didn't win, and Rogue One didn't win, and at this point, the fact that we're getting more new Star Wars movies, it was really exciting when it first started happening, but now the excitement's starting to wear off, and I find it hard to believe. I just woke up. I find it hard to believe that that people will want to vote for this, especially seeing how the film is divisive. Force Awakens everyone loved, and that came awfully close to getting a Best Picture nomination. The Last Jedi was very, very mixed in its reviews. And the effects were quite good, but I can hardly imagine a lot of people are going to be going so crazy over giving the film an Oscar. I just can't imagine it happening. It's Star Wars, so it'll get some votes, but I just can't imagine. It doesn't do anything terribly revolutionary. Good effects, it'll get some votes, but it won't go far enough. Okay, second most likely to win is War for the Planet of the Apes. Now, I went back and forth on this, because for the longest time I thought this movie had a chance at winning the Oscar. And it's a real shame, too, because this trilogy, they should have won Best Visual Effects for all three movies. It's really, really incredible how these effects how far they've come and how they've evolved. They're very, very impressive. And Andy Serkis should have gotten nominated for all 3 movies. So it's really almost more upset about that than anything else. But you can't deny how incredible the effects in these films are. You can argue the overall quality of this film, of this final film, that wasn't as strong an entry as the first 2. I think it's a good film. I think Andy Serkis is probably better in it than he's been in the previous 2, which is saying something. But with that being said, I just can't imagine this film. Okay. When it comes to visual effects are very good. I think there's still a possibility that this wins. But we saw with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, people thought that was going to win, but it ended up going to Hugo. And then 3 years later, Dawn, a lot of people thought that could potentially win, but no, they gave it to Interstellar. If they've got a shiny other contender that's more high profile, then they're going to give it to him. But there's still that possibility that some Oscar voters will be aware of the fact that, hey, we didn't give awards to the first 2 movies, let's give it to this one. It's very, very, very possible, but I'm ultimately not going to predict it. My official prediction in this category, number 1, is Blade Runner 2049. Now, this is an interesting case, because it was a very divisive film among critics and audiences. I think critics mostly loved it, but audiences were very split on it. And some people thought it might have come close to a Best Picture or Best Director nomination. And you can debate whether or not that almost happened. It got a lot of good nominations in the end: cinematography, production design, both sound categories, and visual effects. And we're going to see in a little while what it's going to do in Best Cinematography. But for visual effects, I think that a lot of people are very, very impressed by the visual effects in this film. Specifically, there's the sex scene with the hologram morphing over the other woman, and people say that's very, very impressive to look at. And at the same time, there's the scene where Rachel comes back, and both of those scenes are really, really impressive from a visual effects standpoint. And both of those scenes make an argument for why the film should win Best Visual Effects. And there's impressive visual effects throughout the entire movie. It's not just those 2 scenes. Whereas with War for the Planet of the Apes, you can argue, it's basically doing what the first 2 films did in a slightly more refined way, and it's not doing that much new stuff. With this movie, it's definitely doing something new and revolutionary, and it's amazing how, even though it's updated, it still looks very, very much like the original from 1982. So, I think a lot of people will love and respect the film. I think that because the film overall is better respected than Apes, and there's also the fact that I think someone made an interesting argument I think back in 2014, where they say the person who directed the visual effects nominee is probably the best indicator of who's going to win. Like, you see, like David Fincher directed Benjamin Button, Christopher Nolan directed Inception and Interstellar, Alfonso Cuarón directed Gravity. Like, if you take a look at the list of directors who have made the visual effects winners, it's actually a stronger list than the list of people who have won Best Director. Like, Martin Scorsese, Ang Lee. Like, we've gotten some very, very impressive directors working on these visual effects powerhouses. And going by that logic, I think it makes more sense to vote for a Denis Villeneuve film rather than a Matt Reeves film. So for that reason, I think Blade Runner 2049 is going to be your winner here. Now, it's going to be a bit of a stressful category. I want to see War for the Planet of the Apes win. I like the visual effects in that more, and I want to see the visual effects artist get something after all 3 films. But personally, that's what I want. But if I'm just voting with my brain and not my heart, I have to say Blade Runner makes more sense as a winner. But it's still possible that Apes could win. So that's my prediction. Thank you for watching. Tune in tomorrow where I take a look at the category of Best Foreign Language Film.